All right, everyone, welcome back to Language Arts class. And today we are going to continue on with the Odyssey with our next section, which is entitled The Land of the Dead. So this would be in your books here, page 969 or page 20 in your PDF file, whenever you go by. And first thing we'll do, let's take a look at the map here. And using our map, let's kind of follow here. So we left off at Sicily, where Odysseus and his men have just overcome Polyphemus the Cyclops, blinding him and leaving him in despair on his island there. And then their plan then is to go to Aeolus because one of the gods there is going to help them out, as we'll see. But things are going to go very much awry, as we'll read, and they're actually going to end up here on Circe's island, which is where they're going to spend some of their time today. And then finally, Teriresis is who they're going to meet in the land of the dead. So this is the gateway to the underworld. So that's essentially where we're going to be. Again, we want to be back here at Ithaca, but things keep leading us astray and seem to be leading us farther and farther away. So we're going to be all the way up here in the land of the dead and on Circe's island here today. Make sure, as you're reading through, to have open your Odyssey character list, which we'll go through a couple today, and then your 12 steps of the hero's journey, because we still have more of step 6 to fill out today. But let's go ahead and get started here up at the top with the land of the dead. So it reads, Odysseus and his men sail to Aeolia, where Aeolus, king of the winds, sends Odysseus on his way with a gift, a sack containing all the wind except the favorable west wind. When they are near home, Odysseus' men open the sack, letting loose a storm which drives them back to Aeolia. Aeolus casts them out, having decided that they are detested by the gods. They set sail for 7 days and arrive in the land of the Lystrigones, or the cannibals. This is the cannibal scene. These creatures destroy all of Odysseus' ships except the one he is sailing in. Odysseus and his reduced crew escape and reach Aea, the island ruled by the sorceress goddess Circe. Okay, before we get into that, a couple things up here. So this scene where they get the bag of winds that is going to take them directly home, they actually get all the way to Ithaca. They can literally see the island of Ithaca. That's home sweet home. They can see it. But his men mutiny because they believe that Odysseus is hiding treasures in this bag given to him by the god Aeolus, right? But that's not true. It's just all the other winds. So Aeolus took all of the bad winds, or the winds that would take them away from Ithaca, put it in a bag so that they could get home as quickly as possible. But because of the mutiny of his men, they open up the bag, which completely throws them off course. They end up back on the island, but the god of the wind says, well, you guys must be cursed, because Odysseus just seems to have bad luck after bad luck. Now, we know that he essentially is cursed by Poseidon, but Aeolus doesn't know that at the time anyway. Then he loses destroys all of his ships except for one as they're fleeing the cannibals. So now it's just Odysseus on one ship with his men. They then make it to the island of Aea, where there's the sorceress goddess Circe. So it says she transforms half the men into swine, pigs, but protected by a magic herb, which is given to him by Athena. So if we go back to our character list here, we can talk about Athena as a mentor. Athena gives Odysseus an herb to protect him against. But this is one of the things she does as a mentor here, is kind of protecting him from this sorceress. So something you can add for Athena there. Oops. Okay, going on then with our next section, it says Odysseus demands that Circe change his men back into human forms. which she agrees to do. Now, what happens here is because he stands up to Cersei and is able to outsmart Cersei, Cersei falls in love with him. And it says here, before Odysseus departs from the island a year later. So she falls in love with Odysseus. And they begin a relationship, let's say, that what Odysseus doesn't know, I should say there is something here that Odysseus doesn't know before we assume he's just, a bad person cheating on his wife, which he kind of is. But there's one thing that Odysseus does not know about what's happening, and that is that time moves differently on Cersei's island. So what he thinks is simply like a weekend ends up being an entire year. And he does not know this. He doesn't realize this. So when he leaves eventually, he's actually very mad at Cersei for essentially tricking him. Because he did not know that. But Cersei agrees to let him and his men go. Says, I won't fight you. I'll let you leave the island. But says he informs him that in order to reach home, he must journey to the land of the dead, Hades, and consult with the blind prophet Tiresias. So she agrees to let him go, but he has to go to the underworld first to talk to this guy because it's his only way home. She's not doing this to be spiteful against Odysseus. She knows that the only way he can make it home is to talk to this guy. So she is trying to help him here. Okay, we can add stuff then for Cersei, who is an evil sorceress, and she is evil. She, for fun, turns people into pigs and then has other people eat those pigs, right? So uninformed cannibalism, if you will, people unknowingly eating other people, who falls in love with Odysseus and begs him to stay, then makes a deal with him if he will travel to the underworld. So a little information on Cersei there. All right, let's go back to our story then. So our beginning here. We bore down on the ship at the sea's edge and launched her onto the salt and mortal sea. Stepping our mast and spar in the black ship, embarked the ram and you, and went aboard in tears, with bitter and sore dread upon us. But now a breeze came up from astern, a canvas-bellying land breeze. Hail shipmate sent by the singing Nymph, with sun-bright hair, so we made fast the braces, took our throts, and let the wind and steersman work the ship with full sail, spread all day above our coursing, till the sun dipped, and all the way grew dark upon the fathomless, unresting seas. So they took flight from Circe's island towards the underworld. By night our ship ran onward toward the oceans born, the realm and region of the men of winter, hidden in mist and cloud. Never the flaming eye of Helios lights on those men at morning when he climbs the sky of stars, nor in descending earthward out of heaven, ruinous night, being rove under the wretches. We made the land, put ram and you ashore, and took our way along the ocean stream to find the place foretold for us by Circe. I love the way they describe this right here. The region of the men of winter, or the mountainous regions here, we can see in Europe, these mountainous regions here. And talking about the men of winter, the men that live on the top of these mountains where it is snowing all the time, right? Okay, going on here. Next page. It says, thereby Prometheus and Eutychus pinioned the sacred beast. With my drawn blade I spaded up the votive pit and poured libations round it to the unnumbered dead. Okay, so I should mention here a couple things. Essentially, they get to a pit. They mean this literally, like a hole in the ground. It's a pit. And this is the entrance to the underworld. But you can't just go in, because if you try to just walk into the underworld, you'll die. So there's a few things they have to do, some ceremonies that they have to perform that are going to allow them to interact with the dead here. And that's what they're going to be doing. So first thing is pouring libations or liquids. Sweet milk and honey, then sweet wine, and last clear water. And I scattered barley down. Then I addressed the blurred and breathless dead, vowing to slaughter my best heifer for them before she calved at home in Ithaca, and burned the choicest bits on the altar fire. As for Tiresias, I swore to sacrifice a black lamb, handsomest of all of our flock, thus to assuage the nations of the dead. I pledged these rites, then slashed the lamb and you, letting their black blood stream into the well pit. Okay, so he's kind of summoning the dead here, and he has to offer them things. So he offers them like these liquids here, and then promises to sacrifice animals and then burn their flesh, the choicest bits, the best parts, sacrifice them by throwing them in the fire to these people, including Tiresias, who is the person he actually needs to meet. Okay, going on here, line 564. Now the souls gathered, stirring out of Urbis, brides and young men, and men grown old in pain, and tender girls whose hearts were new to grief. Many were there too, torn by brazen lance heads, battle slain, bearing still their bloody gear. From every side they came and sought the pit, with rustling cries, and I grew sick with fear. But presently I command to my officers to flay those sheep the bronze cut down, and make burnt offerings of flesh to the gods below, to sovereign death, to pale Persephone. So this would be Hades and his wife, Persephone. Couple things here. The people he's talking about, these people that they've all died in different ways, right? So women whose hearts, right, were gave out because of something terrible. Men who were killed in battle, all coming to this pit to go down into the underworld. Meanwhile, I crouched with my drawn sword to keep the surging phantoms from the bloody pit till I should know the presence of Tiresias. One shade came first, Elpenor of our company, who lay unburied still on the wide earth, and we had left him dead in Circe's hall, untouched, unmourned, when other cares compelled us. And when I saw him there, I wept for pity and called out to him. So imagine this is like a little bit like a Christmas Carol, and imagine Elpenor here as the Christmas, the past one, Ghost of Christmas Past, or whatever it's called. So Elpenor was someone who died at Circe's Hall where they just were, and nobody knew that he died. Nobody realized it. So they didn't bury him. They didn't mourn him. They did not give him the proper sort of respect that you were supposed to give a friend who has died. And Odysseus realizes this, and he starts weeping because he realizes what they've done, this horrible thing that they've done. Going on, then it says, "How is this, Elpenor? How could you journey to the western gloom swifter afoot than I in the black lugger?" He sighed and answered. So essentially he's saying, how did you get to the pit of the dead before I could? And he says, "Son of great Laertes, Odysseus, master mariner and soldier, bad luck shadowed me and no kindly power. Ignoble death I drank with so much wine. I slept on Circe's roof, then could not see the long steep backward ladder coming down, and fell that height. My neck bone buckled under, snapped, and my spirit found this well of dark. Now hear the grace I pray for, in the name of those back in the world, not here your wife and father, who gave you bread in childhood, and your own child, your only son, Telemachus, long ago left at home." So essentially, this poor guy here got drunk, got up on Circe's roof, fell off, and broke his neck, and nobody realized it. Nobody saw him. He fell and he died, and they left him. So some bad luck going on here. When you make sail and put those lodgings of dim death behind, you will moor ship, I know, upon Aea Island. There, O my lord, remember me, I pray. Do not abandon me unwept, unburied, to tempt the gods' wrath. While you sail for home, fire my corpse and all the gear I had, and build a carrion for me above the breakers, an unknown sailor's mark for men to come. Heap up the mound and implant upon it the oar I pulled in my life with my companions." He ceased, and I replied, "Unhappy spirit, I promise you the borrow and the burial." So he says here, Epenor says here, "I know you're going to go back to Aea Island because you promised Circe you would. So when you go back, bury my body, place upon it the oar that he says he pulled his whole life, so the oar that he rode his whole life with his companions, and honor my death." And Odysseus says, "I will. I'll do that." Okay, going on. "So we conversed, and grimly at a distance, with my long sword between, guarding the blood, while the faint image of the lad spoke on. Now came the soul of Anticlea, dead, my mother, daughter of Autolycus, dead now. Through living still when I took ship for holy Troy, seeing the ghost I grieved, but held her off, through the pang of tears, till I should know the presence of Tiresias. So he sees his mother, and he desperately wants to go to her, but he knows that he can't, because he has to wait for Tiresias to come. He summoned him, and he know he will, but he cannot go to his mother who's dead. It will only lead to the pit, to death. So he just has to watch her from a distance. Okay, going on. Soon the dark, that prince of Thebes, came forward, bearing a golden staff, and he addressed me, son of Laertes, and the gods of old. Odysseus, master of landways and seaways, why leave the blazing sun, O man of woe, to see the cold dead in the joyless region? Stand cleared, put up your sword. Let me but taste the blood, I shall speak true. At this I stepped aside, and in the scabbard let my long sword ring home to the pommel silver, and he bent down to the somber blood. Then spoke the prince of those with gift of speech. So he essentially says, give me blood, right, which they've already poured by sacrificing the ewe, and I'll tell you what you want to know. That's kind of what Tiresias does here, is if you come to him, he can tell you the future. So this part right here is essentially going to be like the ghost of Christmas present or whatever. And he's going to tell him his future. So he speaks, great captain, a fair wind and the honey lights of home are all you seek, but anguish lies ahead, and the gods who thunder on the land prepares it. For to not be shaken from your track, implacable, in rancor for the sun whose eye you blinded. So this right here is, hey, it's going to be a hard way home, because what you've done to Poseidon, right? In rancor for the sun whose eye you blinded, as in Poseidon is mad at you because you blinded the sun. One narrow strait may take you through his blows, denial of yourself, restraint of shipmates. When you make landfall on Thringia first and quit the violet sea dark of the land, you'll find the grazing herds of Helios, by whom all things are seen, all speech is known. Avoid those kind, hold fast to your intent, and hard seafaring brings you all to Ithaca. So this right here says, okay, there's a strait that you have to go through, which we'll read later, and then you're going to find this land with the grazing herds of Helios, the sacred cattle of Helios. You have to go on. You cannot, it says avoid these kind. You cannot interact with them. Do not touch these cattle. If you do, or if you can make it through without touching the cattle, you can all make it home. And then it says, but if you raid the beeves, kill the cattle, I see destruction for ship and crew. Though you survive alone, bereft of all companions, lost for years, under strange sail shall you come home to find your own house filled with trouble. So if you do mess with these cattle, you'll make it home, but you'll be alone. It will take you years, and there will be trouble at home with your wife. So what kind of trouble? Well, he says, insolent men eating your livestock as they court your lady. So people in your house eating your food, trying to make a move on your wife. You shall make those men atone in blood. You will kill them. But after you have dealt out death in open combat or by stealth to all the suitors, go overland on foot and take oar, until one day you come where men have lived, with meat unsalted, never known the sea, never seen sea-going ships with crimson bows, and oars that fledge light holes for dipping flight. The spot will soon be plain to you, and I can tell you how. Some passerby will say, what winnowing fan is that upon your shoulder? Halt and plant your smooth oar in the turf, and make fair sacrifice to Poseidon, a ram, a bull, a great buck boar. Turn back and carry out pure hecatombs at home to all wide heaven's lords, the undying gods, to each in order. Then a sea-born death soft as his hand of mist will come upon you when you are wearied out of his rich old age. Your country folk and blessed peace surround you, and all this shall be just as I foretold. So this whole end here is essentially, if you do make it home, or when you do make it home, you need to apologize to the gods, and you need to do it real bad. You need to go out, sacrifice a ram, a bull, a great black boar, promise things to the gods, and if you do, then you will, it says, a mist, soft as this hand, a mist will come upon you when you are wearied out with rich old age. So essentially, you'll live a long old age before you die, and your country folk will be blessed. So you and your land will survive. But you have to sacrifice this stuff to Poseidon because you made him mad. And that's the way it works with the Greek world and the Greek gods. If you make them mad, bad stuff's going to happen to you. All right, let's go ahead and fill out here a couple sentences. Hopefully you've already filled out your stuff with Polyphemus. So just a couple sentences here. Odysseus becomes trapped on Circe's island for a year, then travels to the underworld to learn how to make it home, which he does. So essentially just a couple sentences describing what happened in those pages that we read. All right, everyone, that's it for today. See you guys next time.